The difference of opinion at City Hall this week made national headlines. A group of councillors shooting down an affordable housing plan, only to reverse course a day later. But the issue at the heart of that matter isn't settled, and that's whether residential zoning restrictions should be eased. That'll be back before council in a few months. So what to make of the events of this week and the potential pushback to come? Let's ask the Thursday political panel. Joining us this week, the Globe and Mail's Kelly Cryderman. Hi, Kelly.
Hi.
Shifrah Gadamsetti from Summa Strategies. I'll note she also used to work for a city councillor. Hi, Shifrah.
Hi, Rob.
And first time in a long time, Gerson, journo and co-founder of The Line. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So a lot of City Hall watchers have been sounding off on this, and they pointed at the bloc that voted against the plan, and then others are pointing at council altogether, saying it's super dysfunctional. Let's just start with a general take on what happened, Jen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you did have a core of more conservative councillors representing more conservative Calgarians be quite reflexively obstructionist, how shall I say, against proposals to ease restrictions. As a suburban baller myself, a lake community person myself, I can totally understand why a lot of Calgarians are concerned about the risks involved with higher density in their communities. A lot of the people who live in those communities bought in because they like low density living. They like those communities the way they are. They want to raise kids there. They want the big yards. And there's a real reflexive sort of NIMBYism there that is also, we don't want poor people in our neighborhood. We don't want the type of element that higher density brings in. There's a lot of snobbishness that goes along with that as well. And I think the councillors are reflecting a lot of that. We know that there's a real intrinsic element of that among a very conservative set in Calgary. Unfortunately, we live in a democracy, not a technocracy, in which case the wishes of those people have to be heard and respected to some degree.
And that was Andre Chabot's point yesterday when he was on the show, Shifrah. So he came on as someone who changed his mind, and what he said was basically, look, we were being asked to vote on a package, take it or leave it in total, and we wanted to pull elements out of it, including the residential rezoning bit, so that the public could have their say. And he was essentially saying, look, I'm representing the people of my ward. What's the problem with that line of thinking?
Well, I think it's lazy, and I think it shows a lack of leadership. And Andre Chabot isn't the only one who voted no. I think we can say that for everybody who voted no. Part of council's job is to make sure that they're doing the work, and that is not a reason that reflects the responsibility that they should have shown. They appointed a task force of experts that they themselves have deferred to, have trusted to pull together best practices, and then to go and say, well, I'm actually not going to take your recommendation because some people might not like it. And on that point, I also feel like the lack of leadership and laziness, frankly, is combating the narrative, combating some of the negative perceptions of what gentle density might bring to a neighborhood. As Jen had mentioned, of course, people purchase homes and they have an idea of what that community might look like, but that doesn't mean that gentle density is going to withdraw from that. It's going to take away from that. There's lots of ways to introduce many of those recommendations and still keep the character of the neighborhood.
Lazy or truly representing the constituents' views? You settle this for us.
I think, I've been a renter in Calgary and a homeowner in Calgary, and I remember as a renter being surprised speaking to Conservatives about how much they cared about their single-family home zoning and what a thing that was, especially in Calgary, I think. I think that's why some people move here. At the same time, seeing council being somewhat surprised, it almost seemed like they were taken aback by the whole package and weren't ready for it, and they're surprised that Calgary is having an affordability crisis. They seemed unprepared for what they were being offered. They seemed unprepared to deal with the number of people that are moving to our city right now in a reasoned fashion, and that is striking. It's also striking to me how quickly this became a federal issue, which it hasn't 3-4 years ago. That has changed so quickly that we have the federal housing minister weighing in. We have prominent federal Conservatives weighing in on a municipal issue in Calgary. Why? Because housing is the biggest issue, top 3 issue for sure in the country right now. And the fact that City Council was unprepared by their decision is the most striking thing to me. They didn't understand what signal they were sending. And they weren't understanding that Calgary is not even the city it was in 2018 when they rejected secondary suites in the same way. It's a completely different issue right now.
I'm going to return to this, and I hear you on all of that. And there's politicking going on at the federal level, but this is a local issue. These people they're elected locally to represent people who may not feel the same way other people on council feel about it. Isn't this the way the process is supposed to work?
I mean, yes. I mean, I agree with your point about leadership and part of the conversation here is that these councillors need to be having conversations with their constituents to explain the benefits of bringing in some, as you say, gentle density. We're not talking about building 20-story condos in the middle of Midnapore. Okay, nobody's having that discussion. But bringing in a few more duplexes, bringing in some more townhouses into some of the more established neighborhoods. There are ways to do this, and there's benefits to the community. Is of course with more people in that community, you also have more access to amenities. The trade-offs for the type of traditional suburbs that we've been building since the 50s is that, of course, you're very car dependent. We know that people are going to become less and less car dependent going forward for lots of different reasons. And also, you don't have access to great restaurants and things to go see and do within walking distance. Bring more people in, those amenities come with you. So, there's a trade-off, there's a conversation around balance. Not all communities need to be the same. Not all communities need to cater to the same kinds of people. That's fine. There is a conversation that needs to be happening, not just councillors listening to the worst prejudices of their constituents, but also having a conversation and a back and forth about what they need, what they fear, and what needs to happen for the city as a whole.
Shifrah, you can weigh in on this and then we'll move on, but I guess what I'm hearing from the progressive side of council is if that conversation were to happen, that's just an invitation to the NIMBYs to game the system and to prevent the kind of mixed housing that we need in order to see everything that Jen just highlighted. And I'll add to that, the next generation, our children, be able to afford to live in this city with us. So is that a legitimate concern? Are they that powerful a bloc?
Having sat through the secondary suite hearing, the Southwest BRT hearing, the guidebook hearing, the bylaw hearing around support, like banning conversion therapy, you're always going to have people who are loud and vocal come out, and it is their democratic right to be heard, whether it's at a public hearing, whether it's via email, however they want to get in touch. But it's also, as Jen had said, the responsibility of the councillor to say, perhaps what you're saying is not the full picture. And this is not just about housing. As Jen had said, it is about those amenities. We have an affordability crisis right now, and that impacts transportation, it impacts housing, it impacts our ability to pay fewer taxes, which is something that everybody is always concerned with at City Council. And so there's a way to leverage this conversation into talking about the broader benefit for the city entirely.
Are you convinced those who oppose this will do that?
I think they might not change their minds in the immediate term, but I would urge councillors to think about previous instances where things have been really challenging and they've moved forward with the decision, secondary suites being one of them.
You want to get into it?
I do, because I think conservatives are changing on this. I think we saw that a bit yesterday as they changed their vote, because we have a federal conservative leader who's talking about gatekeepers. We have a federal Liberal Party that has an accelerator fund for housing. The federal government is moving into this space and will have to move into this space. Voters are concerned. So what is a local issue, which I think very quickly will become a federal issue.
And further to that point, as you have a conservative bloc that is trying to attract more and more young people, and as more and more young people age into more conservative views, I think that they're bringing a lot of urbanist sentiments into the conservative sphere. So, the conservatives who are 60s, above the age of 60, have a very different view about what kinds of neighborhoods they want to be living in than the conservatives who are potentially 40 or 50. You know what I mean? Like it's me raising my kids now at this age. I mean, if you want to peg me as a conservative, fine, whatever. I would like to be able to walk to a coffee shop. I'm not looking for a car-dependent community, even if I want something a little bit more suburban. So the sentiment, I think, is changing within the conservative movement as well on that stuff.